Good morning. My name is Christine Babbs. I'm the Lifelong Learning Development Leader for schools from Liberton High School. And this is Lynne Brown, LLDL Schools from Gracemount High School. We're delighted to be with you today as representatives of our colleagues in the 23 high schools within the City of Edinburgh. We'd also like to thank Paul McCloskey, Cleo Jones and The Edge for giving us the opportunity to share with you our work on the Escape, Connect, Relate, Edinburgh School Libraries Bibliotherapy project. As you can see, from the slide, bibliotherapy has been recognised as a tool to promote healing, empathy and reduce stress for almost 3,000 years. From Sicarus, who told us that over the library entrance at Thebes, the library of Pharaoh Ramses II, it bore the inscription, "The House of Healing for the Soul." And to the wonderful Matt Haig, who said, "Imagination is the flip side of anxiety. Obviously, if you're anxious, you're going to imagine stuff all the time. You need to fill that imaginative space with positive, fun and nourishing stuff, and books can do that, give you that. Through fiction, you can escape into a world that isn't your life, but can help you deal with it. And that applies as much to a 7-year-old as to a 70-year-old. Recent studies from the University of Sussex, which are an amazing statistic this, shows that reading for 6 minutes a day can reduce stress by up to 68%. So what led us, school librarians, to bibliotherapy? It was a result of a casual conversation over coffee during a break-in service day between a colleague and myself. She's telling me that her 16-year-old daughter, who, unknown to her mother, misdiagnosed herself. Using the internet, she decided that she had bipolar disorder. And once it came to light, and she discovered it wasn't bipolar, but it was the anxiety she actually had. While I attended the Reader organisation, Better with a Book conference, in May 2014. If you haven't come across the Reader organisation, they're a fabulous group based in the Wirral. I listened with interest to their bibliotherapy work in a variety of settings: care homes, community libraries and prisons. A member of the public was there talking about how she discovered bibliotherapy through the Reader. She admitted to us that she had OCD, and every day she would walk the same way. And one day, instead of turning left, she turned right and walked into a public library. And that's where she discovered the Reader bibliotherapy session taking place. And she admits that saved her life, because if she'd turned left that day, she was heading towards Liverpool Cathedral to throw herself off it. We also listened to the bibliotherapist from the prison, Holloway, who was delivering bibliotherapy sessions every week to a group of very disinterested young people. Weren't engaging, weren't dealing with it. They were reading stories and sharing poems. There was one person who sat like that for most of the time until she heard a story in a poem, and she unfurled and said, "That's me, that is." And I think that's the first time that person connected empathetically with anybody, with a story or with other people. We recognised the importance of providing our students with good quality, reliable information and using fiction books to create empathy and connections. We're aware of Reading Well, prescribing self-help books for adults, but I'm not sure if many teenagers will pick up a self-help book. We're also aware you use picture books to explain life's challenges and changes to younger toddlers. But teenagers are then overlooked, and apart from a piece of research in Israel in the 80s, there was nothing about bibliotherapy and its possible impact on the lives of teenagers today. And a decision was made to support our learners. Clearly, self-help books are not always the best way to tackle the problem, as we have to experience misdiagnosis. Our emphasis is on using bibliotherapy, fiction and poetry for looking and working through the issues, both societal and mental health, of our young people. We invited school librarians and pupils to what we lovingly called a conference. It wasn't really, it was just a lot of people coming. 2 short-term working groups were created, and we looked at what was needed, both the pupils and ourselves, by them and for them. We just discussed the rationale behind what we were doing, the books that we could work with, and what we'd call the project. It was then that the then head girl at Gracemount, Kirsty, and her, I've written that there, why did I do that? And her group derived the name Escape, Connect, Relate. as pupils could not and did not relate to the term bibliotherapy. They were very clear that they wanted an app to support the initiative. And I had an experience, I've got a wellbeing wall in my library, and pupils wouldn't take things off the wellbeing wall. If there's a leaflet about self-harm, they would wait till I was out the room. They were good at spreading the leaflets about puberty around, but that was it. Then, due to council reorganisation, our project was put on hold, but Lynne kept it going.
Right. What happened next was we managed to get funding, and that funding was via the School Libraries Improvement Fund, which was launched at Gracemount by John Swinney, the Deputy First Minister in Scotland, and also sort of organised via SLIF. And after council reorganisation, we found out there was going to be potential funding available via the School Libraries Improvement Fund, and we could then power on with our Escape Connect Relate app idea. A group of school librarians got together and worked quite hard on the application. We felt empowered by the pupils that we needed an app to drive the initiative. The submission, unfortunately, was rejected as we had seriously underestimated the cost of developing an app, and we did feel a little despondent. This funding is for about £1 million over 3 years. So obviously the first year happened, we got rejected. The second year of funding came into being, and we decided we'd consider other projects. We were thinking of like a transition project, a bit like the summer reading scheme, sort of reading from primary 7s through to S1s, and trying to launch an initiative like that. But sort of while we were thinking about other initiatives, we thought, why don't we try for Escape Connect Relate again? Because we had noticed when we looked at the bids that there were lots of other bids connected to mental health, and we thought, oh well, maybe we could try. And so we did, and we were very excited, and we got the funding this time. And the whole funding was for Escape Connect Relate, a bibliotherapy toolkit for teens to support their own mental health and well-being of people around them. And as I said, it was a successful bid. We managed to secure funding for the creation of a toolkit, training for librarians and pupil ambassadors, Escape Connect related areas in all 23 high schools, including books and branding. There are 2 toolkits. I don't know if Christine, you want to hold up the toolkit? This is the adult one. The pupil one comprises of a definition of each issue. So it could be a mental health issue, or it could be a social issue. So, for example, it could be to do with anxiety, or it could be to do with LGBT, or it could be to do with an illness, something like that. Because although we realised that majority of things would be to do with anxiety, depression, etc., we did feel that obviously there is a big impact on people's mental health if they have problems with their sexuality or their colour or their race, etc. So we wanted to build that in as well. There is a list of books that we have deemed appropriate for the collection, and a list of websites to support pupils. The websites are checked for accuracy, and where possible they are verified by appropriate professionals. It is hoped that we eventually get this online with an interactive website, if not an app. The staff toolkit has everything that the pupils has, but it does have training information, how to use pupil ambassadors as part of their role, and how to publicise the bibliotherapy, how to use different types of bibliotherapy initiatives. One of them will hopefully manage to demonstrate to you later, and templates. This amazing map here was designed by Christine's husband, who happens to be a graphic designer, and this lists all the books from our very first collection of books. So all these, from the funding, we managed to buy copies of all the books on this list here, and we colour-coded them into the various sections, the various issues, so bullying, mutism, young carers, bereavement, family breakup, dementia, anxiety, so refugee crisis, Tourette's, autism. Now, autism was we've had a discussion about this recently, and it's gone into a different section now, so we'll maybe discuss that later. From now, we've got a new collection of books. We're recommending new books. So hopefully there'll be some more tube maps on the way, and or maybe an expansion to that one, hopefully taking less time than HS2. Now, from what happened when we got the funding, obviously we produced the toolkit, we got the books all together, but one of the most important things was the training aspect of the funding. And all librarians and pupil ambassadors had bibliotherapy training, and we managed to secure a PhD student, Jennifer Horan, who is now got a job as a school librarian in South Lanarkshire, but she specialised for her dissertation on bibliotherapy, and she did some excellent training sessions with both us at first and then with our pupil ambassadors. And one of the books she used, we will hopefully declare to you at the end, okay? We recruited pupil ambassadors, and we got together some maybe second, third year pupils in each school, so we can hopefully build their knowledge and get them through the school, as opposed to targeting fifth and sixth years who were snowed under with exam pressures at that time. So we recruited these young people, and they were really enthusiastic, and we had a conference, an official conference, and at that conference we also gave them training on how to look after their own mental health. And one of the things about this project, we have actually managed to network so much more with people from within the council and out with the council to get connections going. So the people we dealt with then was Catherine Davison from Educational Psychology, and Amy Ferguson, who's from the wellbeing team. Almost all school librarians have gone through a Scottish Mental Health First Aid course, which has resulted in some schools actually pushing for the course to be actually run for all teachers and all staff within their schools, so that's been a real positive. I know, for example, at my school, because of Escape Connect Relate, part of our health and wellbeing team this year, there's a real focus on mental health, and all the staff who are on that particular working group are actually going to be trained in Scottish Mental Health First Aid. So that's fantastic. So 12 of us also took part in a Safe Talk Suicide Alerters course. This seemed to really this was run by someone from the council, and it really complements the Scottish Mental Health First Aid course. And all schools had the opportunity to bring pupils to one of the 4 sessions of mindfulness run by Colin Maguire, who's a mindfulness specialist. And it wasn't just the ambassadors who showed up for that. There was lots of different people. Christine, there was quite a few young people in our session that had nothing to do with...
No, but their discussion was, can we not do this more often, Miss? So, yes, we could do this more often.
Okay. Finally, we had a launch in May last year, and this was a fantastic experience. It was a celebration of our first year involving all aspects of Escape Connect Relate. There was a story cafe, Escape Connect Relate Jenga, a display of resources and toolkit, the fiction prescriptions from Dr. Julie. We were entertained by Colin Maguire, who, as well as a mindfulness professional, he's a mindfulness poet, who, alongside his amazing performance of his poem Shut Up, he managed to get the following people to think of nothing for 3 minutes: school librarians, head teachers, our professional guides, Jennifer and Amy, strategic lifelong learning managers, and our executive director over there. Not forgetting our amazing pupil ambassadors. Since the launch, Escape Connect Relate Toolkit and resources can be found in all 23 high schools in Edinburgh. This includes branding banners, shelf headings, bookmarks and badges. It's important to realise that although we're up here speaking about the initiative ourselves, it's not just us two or 2 or 3 other school librarians. It's all school librarians that are involved in lots of different ways.
So, what's been happening with Escape Connect Relate and the resources within all the 23 high schools? John Clarkson, who's LLDL from Trinity Academy, summed up the project beautifully when he said, the Escape Connect Relate project has been left open enough for school librarians, pupil ambassadors and teaching staff to put their own stamp and mark on it. The scope and potential of it, however, is huge. In Trinity, they've encouraged both S2 and S3 classes to read some of the 8 books that we've highlighted as books of the year, and we'll be making a series of short films. They plan to tie Escape Connect Relate into their reading programmes, and they're displaying the bibliotherapy tube map in all English classrooms as well as the library and throughout the school. And Trinity's not the only one that's doing that. None of this would have been possible without the funding that's been created for this project and the meticulously prepared, and I'm not selling, we're not blowing our own trumpet here, and considered resources that have been brought into each of our schools. In these times of mental health issues on the rise, society changing, and young people in particular feeling isolated, Escape Connect Relate goes a long way to develop empathy as well as the comprehension of both our lives and those of others. Education in Edinburgh schools is stronger for it, and school libraries, which have always been a learning hubs that have an open for all policy, are providing a central area to develop it. Here's a flavour of just some of the other activities that are going on around the city. The collections are being borrowed, bibliotherapy sessions held, and networks being made. For pupils, we have directed book displays. We have discrete sessions on anxiety. We have relaxation sessions, either at lunchtime or P7 or for P7 transition days. Story cafes at lunchtime, or if you're at Liberton, from 8 o'clock in the morning, where you have a story with a hot chocolate. Senior mental health and wellbeing elective group was following ECR, and they read the books, have done reviews, taken part in relaxation and book cafe events. The use of the toolkit for pupils looking for information for discursive or persuasive essays. Therapy dogs. Therapy dogs are in several high schools. I have 2. We have Bailey and Ted. The impact on these dogs have been phenomenal. I'll mention a couple of our kids. Child A, who's autistic and normally leaves the school he doesn't sustain a whole day in school, but he does stay to see the dogs in the afternoon on a Monday. He doesn't interact with them, but he's there, and he stays there until 2:20, which is astonishing. Child B has severe anxiety and is about coming to school. She does not have a full timetable, and we had a setback post-Christmas, and when her mum phoned on the Monday and they said the dogs are in, she came in, and Bailey the dog nestled into her, and she was there till 3 o'clock, leaving the school smiling. Whereas child C has anger management issues. He loves the dogs being in and interacts with them, and they make him happy, and I've never seen an incident with them. We have also positive chats about reading books with the and reading books with the dogs, and in fact we reviewed one for Teen Titles, our book review magazine. For staff, some schools have had a 1 hour silent reading activity and an in-service day. Others have met with parents and pupil councils to talk about ECR, and they've taken part in a mental health information evening. And ambassadors throughout the city have promoted ECR to teaching staff at a CAT session. We've also embedded ECR into Teen Titles, our book review magazine for teenagers by teenagers, shared the projects with representatives of Glasgow Libraries to South East. We've also shared it with the South East Improvement Collaborative and with public library leads across Scotland. We also met with John Swinney and discussed ECR along with some pupil ambassadors. Those ambassadors were inspiring. When they shared the scope of the project with the First Minister, they blew my mind. I sat listening to a project being described through the eyes of the target audience. I was so moved. This is a project discussed over a coffee 4 years previously. I'd been there through our ups and downs. We wrote the toolkit, but to hear our young people talk about ECR with passion and excitement, it was a vindication of how worthwhile this project is. Oh God.
That clock's wrong. Okay. It says holiday, what holiday? We had our half-term break a couple of weeks ago, and where our teaching staff were off exciting places like South Africa and where else were they? Tenerife, etc. There was a group of us that were embattled in Edinburgh with Storm Ciara, and we really targeted work on Escape, Connect, Relate. We did the Safe Talk training. We visited Waterstones to research new titles for the book list. A request has gone to publishers to see if they could send us copies to review, and Christine's got a pile in her library now. We've been quite successful so far. A very lively debate took place on what to include on the list. There was battles to and fro. So someone was asking us earlier on about discussing books to promote and discussing books to buy. That was certainly a really fantastic debate. The toolkit was literally pulled apart. New headings decided, then books and websites were updated. Finally, we went to look at what worked for bibliotherapy wise in schools, how to publicise the resource both in and out of school, and the authority.
Right, the future for ECR. Well, ECR has arrived on the landscape at exactly the right time and in the right place, and we have a tremendous opportunity to ensure that all of Scotland, indeed the world, I'm not looking for world domination or anything, benefits from the project. We'd like to extend the project beyond Edinburgh and to ensure that ECR is seen as an example of good practice throughout the country. To this end, we'd like to create the web-based version of ECR with video interviews with authors and students and educational psychologists and wellbeing. Our vision would be that young people would discuss the book and its theme with authors while the professional explained the theme and offered practical hints and suggestions. This is something in our original bid document with our app, but it was put on hold because of, well, my fear of GDPR. But after a recent discussion with City of Edinburgh Council Information Compliance Officer, this fear has receded somewhat, and if we embed privacy by design, we can go ahead with this aspect of the project. If we incorporate what we want to do, why we want to do it, who's involved and how we're going to do this, then we can press ahead. Data protection guidelines should not stop us. This is a sea change and will allow us to work through the steps to protect our young people. We want to ensure that our logo is seen as a gold standard for ECR, I think a bit like a kite mark. We also want to organise a pop-up ECR Book and Wellbeing Festival targeted at BGE students, incorporating young adult authors, storytellers and wellbeing practitioners. We want to create a digital version of the toolkit. We want to continue to update our book list to incorporate latest titles, and so far publishers are on board with this. We want to continually revise and update the websites. We want to promote the toolkit throughout the country. That would be an interest for some people, for instance, from private schools within Edinburgh. We continue to increase our working with a range of outside agencies and people. It was through ECR, for example, that the school librarians were trained in Safe Talk, and that we now have links with LGBT Youth Scotland. This article in The Guardian on the 17th of February about Bradford reminds us that libraries truly can be houses of healing for the soul. Thank you.